America's healthcare advocate, Kerry Hall.
Hello, America. Welcome to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA here on the HIA Radio Network. You can find out more about me and this show by going to the website, americashealthcareadvocate.com. americashealthcareadvocate.com. You have questions, send me an email. I get a whole bunch of them, but I answer each and every one of them. So we want to thank all of you out there in the audience for listening to this broadcast as we broadcast across the country. We just added 2 new affiliates. I'll talk about that a little later in the show, but also 16 podcast platforms and 648,000. This continues to amaze me. 648,000 downloads and listens on our podcast and YouTube. So thank you to all of you out there that pay attention to this broadcast. It's greatly appreciated. If you are looking for help, if you're chronologically challenged or you're looking for an ACA Obamacare plan, you might want to give the lovely Carol Lee Steele a call over RPS Benefits by Design, 877-385-2224. She helps people all over the country with Medicare and with the ACA issues. So if you want to give her a call, 877-385-2224. They're happy to help you anywhere in the country find coverage. So we're going to do a show today that's a little different than what we usually do. This show is kind of centered on brokers, but it also is a show that I want employers to listen to because you're going to learn a lot today. In studio with me today is Stephen Combs, founder of BrokersBloc. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you.
You've been here multiple times, but you've been off camera, so I got you this time.
You did. Yeah, you got me this time, yeah.
All right. And Ryan Ross, who is Marketing and Operations Director. Welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to have both you here. So these 2 young men, they're young by me, okay, because I'm 76 years old, as we all know, okay? But their approach to this business is significantly different than anything I've seen out there. And if you're a broker and you're looking for a better way to do business, an innovative way to do business, I strongly suggest you pay attention to this broadcast because, I've been doing this for 27 years. I'm 22 on the radio, according to Dave Thiessen, my producer. And I read the book. So this young man, Ryan Ross, wrote a book. It's called Benefits with Friends. It's a really good book. It's written as a novel. Okay, we'll talk more about it. But my point in saying this to you is you're never too old to learn. I learned things in reading that, the way they do things, the things that they're doing to improve the broker experience, to improve what brokers do for their clients, to help brokers do a better job. And that's really what we're going to talk about today. So welcome again to both of you. So let's just start off with, how did this all come about, Stephen? I mean, you live in Atlanta. He lives in New Jersey. How did this all come about?
So I was a broker in the Metro Atlanta market for about 7 years. I was working with my father. Came in, and the book kind of highlights this, but I always joke that my dream as a child was to be a benefits broker. And
okay, that's an unusual dream, Stephen. I don't think Ryan had that dream as a child, but anyway.
And my backup plan is to be a professional motocross racer.
Okay.
So glad that the first one worked out,
Yeah, it's a lot safer, okay.
It's a lot safer, yeah. So anyways, was actually living out in Utah after college, selling property and casualty insurance. And my dad had some health issues back in Georgia. And my mom had actually called me and said, hey, he needs your help. He's having some health issues. So I flew back in and started working with his agency, and I actually did fall in love with the benefits industry. Worked with him for quite some time selling small group, middle-sized benefits. And we had worked with several general agencies in that market and just saw lots of gaps between the carriers, the access, the coverage, the things that are innovative that a lot of GAs just don't seem to have. And so I wanted to create a general agency that offered different solutions for brokers that I couldn't get from the ones in that market.
And you did.
And I did, correct, yeah.
Ryan, let's talk a little about you. What brought you into this sphere, and how did you get involved with Stephen, and then the two of you come together and establish what I think is a pretty amazing company, sure. BrokersBloc.
So I am not a benefits guy. I didn't know benefits was around or a thing until, other than like experiencing Mind Your Own Hill companies, right? Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't know about benefits, but I know a lot more about marketing. I came from the marketing world, marketing and ad sales. I worked at Dow Jones.
Yeah, I saw that. Dow Jones, you worked at Dow Jones, and you also worked at financial companies.
Yeah. And then a marketing technology company in London. So like my background as, my role at BrokersBloc is marketing and operations. That's kind of what I've always focused on. I started my own marketing agency in 2021. And eventually I'm like, I need to find a niche. And the niche, I was like, okay, I know the world of financial advising. So I said, I'm going to help financial advisors who sometimes help with benefits, right? As we all know, for John Coleman, he does that too. But I was speaking at an event. I was reached out to by a guy named Don Chimay. He told me about, this is NABIP, right? I'm a member of NAFA, which is for Insurance and Financial Advisors. But this guy reached out and he's like, hey, can you speak about marketing at this event in Atlanta? I'm like, I'm in New Jersey. You would just fly down. He's like, yes. But I'm like, all right, stage time is money time.
Yeah.
So if you can get on stage, do that. And this is what I advise brokers to do.
I used to do a lot of it.
It's a really good way to just generate authority. So I said, let's do that. And one of the people on the board of NABIP was Steven, and he reached out to me separately, right? He reached out to me on a Monday. He's like, can we speak later today? And I'm like, I'm booked today, but let's speak tomorrow. I didn't know where this guy was coming from, honestly. But I'm like, wait, I looked in my email. And I found he's with NABIP. And I thought it was about that. But then he told me about something totally different. And I told him, I'm like, I'm not aware of what benefits are or how it works at all. So that being said, I know a lot about marketing. And he's like, all right, that's fine. You know about the financial services industry. It's kind of like that. And so I just had to learn a lot about it. So we met, last March? And here we are. And we've grew a lot last year and we'll continue to grow.
Well, what you've created, Stephen and Ryan, is unique. I don't know anybody else that's doing what you're doing. There's a lot of GAs out there, okay? I was never a fan of GAs and definitely not a fan of FMOs. In fact, all of my contracts with Benefits by Design over the 27 years I did it were direct with the carriers. I wouldn't work with an FMO. But if I had a GA out there that could provide the kind of things that you guys are doing, that would have been a different world. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what you see as your mission with BrokersBloc before we go to the break here. We got about 3 minutes.
Yeah, so our mission is, we always say we're not anti-BUCA, but we're a non-BUCA benefits agency, general agency. So we're not trying to disparage the BUCAs. We're just trying to show brokers that there's alternative solutions out there. And there's a million out there, some really good, some really bad. So we've carefully vetted all of our carrier partners, looked at the paper that they're on, the reinsurance, the networks, the PBMs, make sure that the package is cohesive. It's a cohesive tech stack that bundles together nicely, that has a good user experience. So we just built a suite of products that are, again, non-disruptive to the employee and the employers, but that can save them money on some of the low-hanging fruit things, such as the pharmacy benefit manager and some steerage as well around, hospital claims.
We're going to talk a lot about that. We're going to do a deep dive on some of those things as we go through the show, but I want to explain what that term BUCA means for you and the audience that are listening. What's he talking about? That's Blue Cross, that's United, that's Cigna. That's who we're talking about here. We're talking about the big major carriers across the country that basically control the markets right now. So when you talk about BUCA, what happens there is there's not a lot of competition anymore between the carriers, primarily because, especially when you're talking about small group, medium-sized group, because of ACA, who sets the regulations. This is what you can offer. Someone said that basically what Obamacare did was it turned insurance carriers into utilities, which is pretty much correct when you think about it, because the rates are set by the different states. They have to get approval to set a rate, and they're only allowed to offer certain things and a certain amount of money they're allowed to make, or the rest of it has to go back if they exceed that profit. So it's a completely different world than it used to be before Obamacare. And that's why I think there's a need for what these two young men are doing out there. And especially if you're a broker, if you're a medium-sized broker, you're a small broker, and you don't have the tools, you don't have the ability to do what they do, they can add a lot. We're going to talk a lot about that today, and you're going to give you information I think can make a difference to a lot of you out there. If you want to go to their website, it's BrokersBlock.com. BrokersBlock.com. It's spelled B-L-O-C, by the way, broker, B-L-O-C, one word.com. We'll be right back after the break. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate, broadcasting here on the HIA Radio Network, coast to coast, across the USA. Stay right there. We've got more. Welcome back. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA here on the HI Radio Network. My producer is Mr. Dave Thiessen behind the cameras, the man who puts all these shows up on all the podcast platforms and the YouTube platform, and Garner Cowdery, who does all the work behind the microphones, putting all the audio together as we broadcast coast to coast. By the way, 2 new affiliates. We have WFEA AM in Manchester, New Hampshire, and another new affiliate in Charlotte, North Carolina, WRHI AM and FM. We're on for 2 hours every Saturday there. I guess they really like us. We thank you all and make you part of America's Healthcare Advocate broadcasting family. Welcome to the network. We're happy to have you. In studio with me, Stephen Combs and Ryan Roth. They are from BrokersBloc. The website for them, by the way, is BrokersBlock.com. BrokersBlock.com. Let me tell you a little bit about these 2 young men. They're kind of amazing young men as far as I'm concerned. Stephen is the founder of BrokersBloc. Stephen helps insurance brokers cut through the noise, confidentiality, identify high-performing, trustworthy vendors in an industry where brokers are constantly bombarded with vendor pitches. Are they ever? I should know, okay? What he's doing basically is creating an alternative here. Their mission is to empower brokers to move beyond the default of brokers with clients that are better, safer, smarter benefit solutions for their clients. And their clients are brokers. So this is where this makes a big difference, which is why I wanted to read a little bit about his bio. Ryan has worked at the intersection of marketing and financial services since 2011. He founded an independent financial advisor marketing company in 2021. He spent 10 years at Dow Jones. That must have been really interesting, Ryan. And then the Financial Times, which is another interesting newspaper. You ever see that pink newspaper in the airports? That's the Financial Times. It's a pretty interesting newspaper to read. And then he went on to produce and hosted over 1,000 webinars and 250 podcasts. And he also wrote the book, and I think it's kind of amazing, the book Benefits with Friends, which I read. All right. I'll talk a bit more about that in this segment. A pretty remarkable young man. He's run 16 triathlons and 3 Ironman triathlons. So he's also a pretty good athlete. So let's talk about this book for a minute, because I was fascinated by this. I told you when you came in here that I get a lot of people on this show that write books. Most of them, I try to read them out of courtesy, but most of them are boring as hell and dry, and they're how you're going to do this or how you're going to do that. So you wrote this as a novel. Yeah. And I'm reading this and I'm going, that's Stephen in there. That's Stephen in the book. Now, I'm going to get to that part in a minute. And some of the characters in the book, Porterhouse, who has his meetings at the Texas Roadhouse, and it's colorfully written, and it's written in a way that you enjoy reading it. It's not a boring, dry read, okay? So I urge you, if you're a broker, this is online on Amazon. I bought it on Amazon. I forget what the hell it cost, and I read it on online at Amazon on my Kindle. But it's really an interesting book, and here's what I'll say about this. It kind of encapsulates their philosophy of what they're doing and how they're doing it. And it does it in a colorful and interesting way. The interesting part is when you wrote this, you didn't even know him.
I didn't. Well, I knew him, but I didn't know the story about how he got involved in the business. He took over his father's agency.
Just like he just told us.
So weird. I didn't know this. The original plot was like this guy that was in benefits, and he just needed to modernize. But I realized, like, okay, I wrote that to learn about the benefits industry.
You did a pretty good job.
I appreciate that, because it hopefully it comes out in the book. But I wrote it thinking, okay, this guy just needs to modernize, but that assumes he's been in the industry and like he should know some of these terms. So I had to change the plot, and I had to be like, you need to create some stakes in the beginning and some drastic thing. That's just a narrative tool. So I'm like, okay, this guy's, maybe his dad dies, and so he's thrust into.
His dad didn't die, by the way, just so we all know. Stephen's dad's well alive.
But this guy's thrust into the industry, and I'm like, I like food, and so I'm going to name him Al Dente, which you did, right? And he was like a pasta manufacturer, so I knew pasta manufacturing, and he had to learn benefits, he had to get a license, and then he needed to do marketing. So it's for it's for benefits brokers to maybe brush up their skills on benefits. They probably don't need to do that, but it's more of like a marketing instructional book.
No, I would disagree with that. I think that what's in here, like I said, I'm 76 years old, and I was kind of amazed at some of the things you put in here that I saw as pieces that things I did not know about, things that I didn't understand. And I said to you guys off camera earlier, if I had known you before when I had Benefits by Design, I would have been one of your first clients, because you're innovative innovation and your thought process and what you're bringing to the table allows, I see your niche as medium and small brokers. I don't know if that's what you see it as, but that's where I see it. Guys that don't have, and gals that don't have those kinds of tools or resources that you bring to the party. So talk a little bit about that.
Medium and small brokers are definitely our bread and butter. We do work with some larger ones, but most of our brokers are definitely the smaller, medium-sized brokers who need help with technology, with quoting, with spreadsheeting, all those sorts of things. The larger brokers are more so looking just for the carriers that they don't want to necessarily maybe take the time to vet. I understand that.
Like our PSM Nebraska Gig Care, which we're a new carrier in the market, 4 years old. We worked with you guys, et cetera, et cetera. John Coleman, who, by the way, is in the book, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I'll see him up here next week. But so keep going. This is interesting.
Yeah, so we work with carriers that are, well-funded, strong networks, well capitalized, good tech stacks that are seamless for the broker, the employer, and the employee. And so we help the brokers identify and kind of cut through the slop, because there's hundreds of vendors that pop up every single year. They all promise the same things, and then you go enroll a group and then it's a disaster, right? We avoid those things, because when I was a broker, I was always looking for the next shiny object, and so I've learned over the years of doing it how to avoid those disastrous situations.
That's funny when you said the next new shiny object, because it makes me think, Ryan, of how many of those next new shiny objects are out there, and they last a year, 2 years, and they start to crash and burn. And then the broker, and there's one particular group from a number of years ago that was selling group health insurance, and it was like the greatest thing since sliced bread. And they went belly up. And one particular broker I know got stuck with $1 million worth of claims to pay, and another broker, who's a friend of mine, wound up with $500,000 of claims to pay. So vetting these guys, these companies that are coming out, and there's a lot of innovation going on right now, because the BUCA plans, in my humble opinion, are crashing and burning. I don't see how this is sustainable in the long run, because the heavy regulation, you look at some of the increases that came through last year, they're massive. 23%, 30% in Florida. I think it was as high as 38% in some cases. I mean, the industry's boxed in, and it can't seem to figure out how to get around that, and Congress is doing nothing, as usual. All right, so you're not getting anything from the politicians to change it. So what you guys are doing is bringing alternatives to the table, and then showing these alternatives to the brokers. But talk a little bit about what you're doing on the marketing side to help brokers gain visibility, because you've got, the podcast, the webinars, the things that you're doing that you talk about in here. A lot of brokers would go, I don't know if I can do that. So we're coming up on the break, so let's hold that right there. When we come back from the break, I want you to get into that and talk about how that's not really that difficult to do. You illustrate that in the book, and we'll talk about that when we come back from the break. The website is BrokersBlock, BLOC.com, BrokersBlock.com. There's a lot of information up there. It takes time to reach out to these guys. And by the way, they have a thing called the 300 Club. We're going to talk about that in the next segment. If you're an employer and you've got a broker who's lazy and not doing his job, reach out to these guys. They have a network of brokers that are vetted and they're first class, and they'll be happy to help you. BrokersBlock.com. Stay right there. We'll be right back after the break. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA here on the HIA Radio Network. Welcome back. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA here on the HIA Radio Network. In studio with me, Stephen Combs and Ryan Roth from BrokersBlock. Their website is BrokersBlock, BLOC.com, BrokersBlock.com. A lot of great information up there. And I keep talking about this book because Ryan wrote a book that I think is pretty cool. This is Benefits with Friends. We're going to talk a little bit more about it here. So one of the things that you spent a lot of time on that book is marketing. So let's talk about how you help the piece in there on podcasts, which I thought, here we do podcasting a little different than what you're talking about doing. But, to suggest to a broker that they ought to do a podcast, most of these guys and gals are going to go, what are you talking about? I can't do something like that. Sure. So you do it in the book, but describe how you actually do this and why you think this is beneficial to the brokers.
So I think podcasts are really important to do because any broker that wants to create marketing material or just create more sales inflow for themselves, visibility, they need to create visibility. They need to create authority. A podcast is a great way to do that. And I would say it's the most low drag way to do that as well, because all you need is a phone. And there's a scene in the book where one of the characters, he lands a podcast or an interview with this guy that he's wanted to speak with for a long time, and his marketing assistant's like, record that. So he sits down, he asks him some questions, he puts his phone down. That's all you need to do, right? You put your phone down and say, I'm going to record this conversation. You take that audio file, you make a Spotify account, you upload it to the Spotify account, you press publish, which is a really hard thing to do because there's an element of vulnerability when you put anything out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You're talking to a guy's on radio 22 years old.
You're every time you're like, oh, is it ready to go? Make it ready to go. Just push the button. People might not listen in the beginning. You might need to push it out to people in the beginning, but having a conversation on something that you are an authority figure on, or at least you know a little bit about it, right? Having a conversation with friends is even easier because you can banter for a little while and then say, I want to talk about these 5 things in my podcast interview, or maybe it's a shorter version, right? Interviews can be half an hour, or they can be a 5-minute podcast talking about, I want to talk about PBM transparency and how to analyze an EOB, explanation of benefits. Things like that. You can have 3 points that you want to talk about in 5 minutes. You put that on a podcast, but that's only the first step. Then you need to send it to people, right? I recommend people define what's called a Dream 100. This is the list of 100 people that you would do perfect with. And in the book, I talk about...
You do.
I talk about a niche, right? The guy's niche in the book is manufacturing. Why? Because he knows about manufacturing.
Because he made pasta.
He made pasta. He was a pasta manufacturer. But so many brokers, if they say like, I am the broker for associations, right? And friend John Kuhlman does that. That's what his thing is. Right?
He's really good at it.
He probably had,
and he's also in the book, by the way.
Yes. He probably had other types of clients, but if you focus on the niche, what you focus on expands because then you say, this is who I am for, right? You probably get...
And you become the authority figure. And John has become an authority figure in the association business. And you work with him, both of you. So let's segue to something because he threw it out there. But one of the most complicated, misunderstood things out there is the PBM. So first of all, tell what a PBM, Steve, is.
It's a pharmacy benefit manager. It's the part of the health plan that manages all the prescriptions, and that can eat up a lot of the claims. I mean, sometimes over half.
Okay. Explain that.
Yeah, so a pharmacy, like the generic drugs aren't a big deal, even the brand name drugs aren't a big deal. Where it comes into play is those TV commercial drugs, the specialty medications.
Yep.
The ones that, you know, they're paying millions of dollars for ads for because they have a patent on it and they can charge whatever. There's some examples such as Stelara costs like $27,000 every fill, which could be every other month. I mean, who can really afford that as an employee or an employer? But one thing that people don't realize is there's also massive rebates.
That's the hidden part of the industry that people do not understand.
Yep.
So let's talk about that because there's a lot of money there under the table that the employer doesn't see. If the broker's not smart enough to know how to get those rebates, okay, or there's a part of the book actually where I think Ryan talks about asking for the printout from the carrier on the rebates, and what's he get is a cut and pasted spreadsheet that doesn't tell him anything, okay, because that's not something you want to disclose. So talk about it.
So large groups have got rebates forever. I mean, they get them for, if you have 500 plus employees, maybe 1,000 plus, any PBM is going to give you rebates. They want the business to have, there's no volume for them to where it makes sense. Small groups and middle-sized groups historically have never seen them.
No, and they don't know what they are.
They don't know what they are until now. So now there's PBMs that operate just on basically like an admin fee. They charge an administrative fee, but all the rebates are passed through back to the employer.
And they're not for profit, basically.
Pretty much, exactly. Yeah, and those like Stelara, 27 grand after rebates, it's only about 4 grand. It's a big swing.
Yeah, it is a big swing. So at Tatego, with our population science management program for gig care, we have ScriptAid, which is our own PBM, and we do 3 things. We do drug importation. Okay, so if that particular drug, if we brought it in from Canada, would probably be $3,000 or $4,000, if that, maybe less. Okay, so we do it that way. We do it with drugs that are on the formulary if they're expensive, and even if they're not on the formulary, we don't tell you, well, that's your problem. Now, you contrast that with the BUCA ACA plan. The broker's got no solution for that.
No.
Okay. Well, our plan has a solution because we go out and we bring that drug in and we don't make them pay. The difference is what it is when we bring it in. The other thing we do is foundational assistance, and that's a big deal, okay, because what 90% of the people don't know, and most of the brokers don't know or don't know how to do it, is to file for foundational assistance. That's all stuff that you guys do. Yep. So that foundational assistance means, just so you understand the audience out there and brokers, if you've never heard of it, okay, if you need a growth hormone drug and it's $100,000 a year, you're probably not able to afford that unless you're a multimillionaire. But if you are working with a carrier, like in our case, Detego and Population Science Management Gig Care, we actually have our own nurses at Script Aid that go out and do the paperwork, get the medication, and have it drop shipped to your door. And that's exactly what you're talking about, is it not?
Correct. Yeah, they call them patient assistance programs, and so most of our carriers offer them as well, and the member typically gets it for free.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
More times than not, it's free.
Yeah.
We have some carriers that do it very gently, where, hey, you can get the medication through your health plan, but it's going to be your deductible and coinsurance, or we can source it from Canada or New Zealand, or do a PAP or patient assistance program, and it's a $0 copay. Some of our carriers use a hammer instead of a scalpel. So what?
I'm afraid to ask you where we come in, but anyway, go ahead.
So this is not you guys, but what they do is, so they'll cover the medication no matter what on a 30-day to 60-day supply, so there's no disruption in care, right? But then after that, the member then is required to do the program, right? They're required to go through the advocacy program to get the medication. Now, they get it for free, right?
Okay.
Now, if they can't source it internationally, or they can't do an assistance program, then they do get it through the health plan, right? They do cover it, but they have to go through those avenues first. And I do like that for the clients that are willing to have a little bit of disruption, because if you're a group that's being just destroyed by high cost medications, these carriers can be a great solution. But I just have to know, what are your needs? What is your risk tolerance? Is it that you have some medications you want to reduce and you want the employees to have the choice, or do you want to, make the employees go through the program? Again, it's not disruptive. They give them a 30-day to 60-day supply, which is plenty of time.
That's
correct.
The point.
Yeah.
Okay, and so when you talk about these carriers, you're talking about people very similar to what Detego, we're a TPA, but we have our own plans. Talk about some of the other carriers you work with that are not the BUCA plans that are. Look, BUCA plans fit for some people. They don't fit for a lot of people, and a lot of people are struggling with cost. And unfortunately, this is work. Okay, if your broker's not willing to do the work, you're probably not going to know there are alternatives out there. So talk about some of these other alternatives.
Yeah, so we have they really fall into two buckets. We have the tech, stack companies that are very AI-based, tech-based, and that's going to be Angle Health, Arlo Health, Level Health, and those are the three real tech-heavy vendors. Health and Tech as well is very tech-focused. Mm-hmm. All the underwriting's done AI. No health apps are required. Angle goes down to 5 lives. The other 3 go down to 10 lives. They all have prescription management tools. They're all do a little bit differently. Health and Tech is the one that I like for the groups that have a lot of high cost drugs, because they use the hammer approach. The rest use the scalpel approach, where it's, hey, you have the choice, it's up to you. But that's what they do. And then we have some more legacy carriers that are a little bit more well known to the population out there. We got Trustmark.
I know Trustmark. You used to work with them.
They're very good. We work with them a lot. We have formerly Allstate Benefits, now Nationwide Benefits. Yep. They're a carrier. Optimal Benefits.
Yep.
And then here's one that's maybe not well known per se, but Great American Insurance.
I've heard of it. I don't know much about it.
They're a reinsurance company. They've been around since the 1800s.
That's how I know them.
$33 billion in assets. So they're no joke.
No, they are right.
But they've released a small group level funded plan, 2 to 99, 10 plus A underwriting, and the rates have just been phenomenal.
So that is exactly why we're doing this show. What do I always say about this show? We're here to educate and inform. We just informed you and educated you. If you're a broker and you heard some of these names and you want access, you want to know, how do I get involved? What do I do? This makes sense. I've got clients that I need help with. Maybe I've got clients that I want to bring on board, but I can't because I don't have anything innovative. Go to the website, BrokersBlock.com. BrokersBlock.com. We'll be right back after the break. Stay there. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA here on the HIA Radio Network. You can find out more about us by going to the website, americashealthcareadvocate.com. By the way, maybe you work in a medium to small size agency and you guys are struggling, trying to add new clients or even trying to keep your book. This podcast is up on 16 podcast platforms. It's on YouTube. You can go listen to this whole show. Tell the owner of your agency, your brokerage, hey, we need to connect with these guys. Well, why? Who are these guys? Well, go up and listen to the show. Go up and do the podcast. Go up and do the YouTube. We had what do we have? 643,000. Dave just said in our last count. So there we go. 649,000. See, I get it wrong every time. The point I'm making is, you're never too old to learn. There's innovation out there. These two young men, they're young to me, okay, are really good at what they do. And I urge you to take a moment and if you're a broker out there, go to their website, BrokersBlock.com. All right, let's talk a little bit about, first let's talk about the Broker 300 Club, because I think this is kind of cool. And what does that mean?
What it is, it's an exclusive club for our brokers that are, high elite producers that are innovative. They know what they're doing in the industry using innovative carriers. And so what it is we're putting together a retreat. It's going to be in May of next year. And it's going to be for brokers to get together, congregate with the carriers, the innovative carriers, and just have, dedicated attention to learning the new products, processes, systems, networks, everything that's out there that they can offer to their clients. And if you're a broker wanting to be innovative in 2026 and 2027, you definitely want to be a part of it.
See, and what that reminds me of is back in the day when Pareto, which is the largest captive in the country now, and Berkeley Hamilton Captive, when they would hold events, Pareto was probably the best at this. They would hold them usually twice a year in Nashville. And the amount of information that got pumped out in those events. I mean, when I first started with Pareto, I think there might have been 300 total clients and brokers combined. By the time I left, I think it was up to, I think it's 4,000 now, brokers, and I don't know how many clients have got involved. It's gotten enormous, okay? Because Kavanaugh and Clayton, the guys that started, were very much like you guys. They did something out of the box, okay? Problem was, you had to be 100 lives or more to qualify for it. Well, for us, that was great, when we were in the self-funded market. But what you're offering now is a solution for brokers in the small group market. And you just mentioned one of your carriers goes down to 5 lives.
Correct. Actually, several of them go down to 2 lives.
Well, and that's a big deal because there are a lot of mom and pop shops out there that can't get health insurance, or if they get it on the ACA plans, it's horrifically expensive. And this is an alternative for them. So you're educating the brokers on how to find those people, get them set up, and help them do it.
Correct.
Okay. Let's switch gears a little bit and then talk about the broker directory, because this is to the employer out there. Because unfortunately, in this industry, got a lot of lazy people. I'm just going to tell you how it is, okay? My philosophy was, if you can't get in front of your client once a quarter just to tell them how things are going and see how they're doing, are they having problems? Are things going well for them? Are their employees happy? What's going on? That I don't think you're doing your job. And unfortunately, I think in this industry, that doesn't happen a lot. And if you're an employer out there, you're unhappy with a broker that shows up once a year with a spreadsheet and says, pick your poison. That's not the way this should work, okay? So talk a little bit about your broker list and what those are qualified brokers that are looking for alternatives to what's out there. Let's talk about that.
Absolutely. So not only have we vetted carriers, we're also vetting brokers as well. So if a group is looking for a quality broker that can meet their needs, we have brokers in all shapes and sizes. We have brokers that work with small groups, large group, medium groups. So whatever your needs are, wherever you're located at geographically, we can actually source you a very highly vetted quality broker.
And so maybe you'll give them a 2 or 3 and they can pick the one they like type
Absolutely.
of thing? Yeah. So that website is BrokersBlock.com, BrokersBlock.com. There needs to be change in this industry, okay? And, what you're doing, Ryan, and Stephen, the two of you together, to help brokers improve the process, at the end of the day is really going to help the employer and the employee with that experience. Yes?
Yeah. Well, if one of the things that we try to do ourselves is figure out how can we systematize operations and use AI to do that. And I think there's a big opportunity to help brokers do things in a similar way to actually how we do it, whether that's creating content for those brokers, and then the brokers can also do a very similar thing for their clients to find their niche, right? But also figure out, okay, we use AI in different ways in order to streamline our operations because we're a lean team, right? But there's brokers in the similar situations, right? So it kind of, the processes and the systematization funnels down to how the brokers can operate as well. So that's one of the things we can advise on as well.
Yeah, and John Coleman's in the book, which is interesting. And John's done a number of different radio shows. I mean, he's going to be back here next week to do some more. But he works very closely with you guys and has a lot of regard for what you're doing and innovates and uses a lot of your processes. In we talked about associations and how, and I see the emails, the back and forth where you're working with him on the various associations. But he is an example, at least to me, of a broker that found a niche. There aren't a lot of brokers out there in this space, and it's amazed me how it's just blown up. I mean, Tool Belt, all 1099 employees that work at Home Depot and Menards that come out. You buy a refrigerator, you need to have the ice maker put in. These guys come out, or gals, and put it in, and there's a whole association full of these guys. What are there, 250,000 people in this thing? Yeah. NHRA, I have to be a car guy. National Hot Rod Association, that blew me away. I'm like, he brought that, he goes, do you know who these guys? I said, yeah, I've been to more NHRA races than you can possibly imagine. Okay. So, I mean, it's amazing how many of these are out there, and you guys are assisting.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of other brokers can think the same way that he's thinking, right? Like figuring out, okay, his niche is like associations, but the thing is, there's associations for so many things, right? One of our brokers, they focus on credit unions and nonprofits. Interesting. Because these are all groups. Yeah. We were at a Texas Roadhouse the other night, because I love Texas Roadhouse. And we all actually eats at Texas Roadhouse. It's great. Steven, not so much. I'm just going to tell you. But anyway.
Actually, I do.
Okay, never mind. He charges his Tesla. Yeah. So we were in a Texas Roadhouse, and we're like, oh, I bet there's a restaurant association. Of course, you could be a broker. If you're a broker that's worked with 1 or 3 restaurants just because you found the business that way, think like, okay, what are the commonalities between my clients? And maybe they are a restaurant. There's a restaurant association out there. You can be the broker for that restaurant association. Do things like that.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, that's why I think having these two young men here and doing this show today, we're going to do more of this. They've got some great programs, and we're going to be talking about these throughout the year. But this is why I wanted to do this today, because I was that medium broker, that small broker who became a bigger broker because of this radio show back in the day before we had all of this AI and everything else. But the beauty of it is it's a tool now that's available. You just heard Ryan describe it. You heard Stephen talk about their 300 Club, what they're doing. I urge you to take a minute to connect with these guys and just listen to what they've got. You might be surprised what you learn, and you might be surprised how they can help you. The website is BrokersBlock.com, BLOC, BrokersBlock.com. Thank you both for being here. It was a great show today.
Thank you.
Appreciate you both. And now I leave you with this thought from Albert Einstein. The one who follows the crowd will usually get no further than the crowd. The one who walks alone is likely to find himself in places no one has ever been. Remember, friends, it's a funny thing about life. If you refuse to accept anything but the very best, you most often get it. Thank you for listening to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA. Goodbye, America.